Listen carefully. If you listen this class carefully, you can write any answer on social movements. Focus is important for this class, okay? Right now, we are seeing a movement in India which was started worldwide in 2017. Me Too movement. Women are using social media, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp and other social media technologies to spread the awareness, and they want to share their grievances, which is called Me Too movement. Me Too movement is a recent example of social movement worldwide and India. It's a recent example of social movement worldwide and in India. Few years back, when Walmart was established as a group of chain of shops, chain of supermarkets in America, around 40% of small shops around Walmart area were closed down. People in America started agitating against Walmart. This is called anti-Walmart movement. Anti-Walmart movement in USA. This movement have ramifications in other parts of the world also. And in Ireland, earlier, according to Catholic law prevalent in that country, abortions are not allowed. If you want to make an abortion, there is a lot of process involved for taking permissions. It is not so easy. And one woman called Savita Halappanavar died because of the strict procedures in abortions. By the time she got permission for abortion, the baby died in the womb and the mother got blood contamination, both died. And anti-abortions and abortions, there was two strong waves, and right to abortion for medical reason, the movement went on, and recently Ireland agreed for abortions on certain conditions. In the same way, there was a place called Theni district, Bodhi Hills in Tamil Nadu, where neutrino research laboratory was proposed to be established, and people in that area and environmental activists started serious agitations. Now there was a stay. And the most recent example was Sterlite Copper Corporation in Thoothukudi, where when the company wanted to expand its operations in the same area, people started agitation. Initially, violence also erupted and few people died, but finally government locked down the Sterlite Copper Corporation in Thoothukudi. Similarly, there are many social movements in India and worldwide. Coming to India, Chipko movement, where Sundarlal Bahuguna propagated to hug the trees, is a social movement. Apiko movement, led in Karnataka by Panduranga Hegde, is a social movement. Anna Hazare's anti-corruption movement or Jan Lokpal movement is a social movement. Anti-rape movement after Nirbhaya incident is a social movement. And many tribal people lead movements for their rights. For example, there is a hilly area in Orissa called Niyamgiri Hills. Near that hills, a tribal group reside called Dongriya Kones, and mining rights were given for a company called Vedanta Company in the Niyamgiri Hills, and tribals agitated. They led a movement. Finally, they approached Supreme Court. Supreme Court stopped the mining activities. This is a social movement. And Indian freedom struggle itself is a social movement. During freedom struggle, Swadeshi movement is a social movement. Non-cooperation movement is a social movement. So throughout the world and in India, the emergence of social movements represents the awareness of the people towards a particular cause. The awareness of the people towards a particular cause. Social movements can be for a change or to resist a change. Social movements can be for a change or to resist a change. Never think that all social movements are progressive. Sometimes some social movements can also make us to be regressive. They don't want change, they can. Why do social movements occur? Sometimes cultural drifts. Whenever suddenly culture changes, suddenly new things comes, people agitate. Social injustice. Social injustice. People agitate. When there is a social injustice, people agitate. This is how social movements emerge. They want a change. They want to see some social change, political change, economic change. For example, in UK, in 1839, more than 1 million males signed in a charter. More than 1 million males signed a charter for universal male franchise. They want all males in the country should have voting rights. At that time, all people do not have voting rights, and that is also a social movement. And there is a term, new social movement. What is the difference between a traditional social movement, a social movement, and a new social movement? There is a term called new social movement. What is the difference between a traditional social movement or social movement and a new social movement? New social movement is on quality issue. Social movement is on basic rights. New social movement is on quality. New social movement basically concerns about quality of life, not just life. For example, right to life is a social movement. Right to privacy is a new social movement. Right to vote is a social movement. Right to information is a new social movement. Okay, right to vote is a basic right. Right to get information is an additional right. That's a new social movement. Right to life is a social movement. Right to survival is a social movement. Right to privacy is a new social movement. Basic human rights movements are social movements. LGBT rights movements are new social movements. And right to live with dignity, right to personal liberties, right to privacy, in fact, right to pollution free environment, all these things comes under new social movements. So the basic difference between social movement and new social movement is, social movement deals with basic rights like freedom, struggle, like African National Congress in South Africa. Anti-apartheid movement is a social movement basically. Anti-apartheid movement. Right to privacy is a new social movement. Anti-Walmart movement is a new social movement. People do not want nuclear energy. People's action against nuclear energy in Kudankulam is a new social movement. Anti-corruption movement is a new social movement. Whereas basic tribal rights are social movements. Or basic freedom of a country is a social movement. Or right to vote for women is a social movement. Right to vote for women is a social movement. Right to equal partnership is a new social movement. Right to equal partnership in new fields like pilot post, something else is a new social movement. So the basic difference between social movement and new social movement is social movement deals with basic rights, new social movement deals with quality of life issues, better quality of life. And traditionally social movements are physically in form. For example, non-cooperation movement is very much physical. People physically present, people agitated. But the new social movements, for example, Me Too campaign, uses information communication technology. In the modern era, you cannot expect people to participate in the physical movements. People to expect to come and participate in the physical form. It's very difficult to sustain a mass struggle in the physical form in the modern era. So new social movements have taken a turn of using information communication technology. They have used information communication technology. That's the basic difference between a social movement and new social movement. Then what is the difference between a pressure group and a social movement? What is the difference between a pressure group and a social movement? Generally, very often, the difference between a pressure group and social movement is very thin. Sometimes the difference is blurred. The difference between a pressure group and social movement is thin. Sometimes it is blurred. It is blurred. The basic difference is, say for example, pressure group is a group, might be trade union group, might be students group, might be religious group. Pressure groups will have a cause. For example, the holistic cause of children or women or trade unions. So from time to time their cause might vary or might take a dynamic portion. Whereas social movement is more about cause, pressure group is more about group. The interests of students group, the interests of trade union group. These interests might be static or dynamic, keep evolving. Social movement is mostly for a cause. Social movement is mostly for a cause. For example, Narmada Bachao Andolan is for Narmada river, against a dam. This is Narmada Bachao. It is for a cause. Okay. And pressure groups are more comparatively institutionalized and organized than social movements. Pressure groups are comparatively institutionalized or organized than social movements. For example, FICCI is a pressure group. It is more institutionalized. Or AITUC is a pressure group. It is more institutionalized. Whereas social movements are not so institutionalized like pressure groups. Social movements are not so institutionalized like pressure groups. Pressure groups are generally long-standing, are generally more organized, are generally long-standing. They will be there for a long time. Some of the social movements, in fact most of them, are spontaneous. They erupt like a volcano and subside suddenly. They erupt like a volcano. For example, Anna Hazare's Jan Lokpal movement erupted like a volcano and subsided immediately when Lokpal bill was passed. Anti-rape movement after Nirbhaya is erupted like a volcano and subsided suddenly. Okay, so pressure groups generally are long-standing. Social movements sometimes are spontaneous. They erupt and they subside. And some pressure groups might emerge into social movements. Some social movements might emerge like pressure groups. There is no watertight compartment that this is a pressure group, this is a social movement. Okay? And pressure groups mostly influence politics, try to indirectly take political support and try to work along with politics. Some pressure groups even take their refuge with the political parties, take the shelter from the political parties. Social movements though try to influence bureaucracy and politics, they are not as political as pressure groups go. They are not like as political as pressure groups are. Okay, social movements, though sometimes they request help from bureaucracy or politics, they demand something from politicians and bureaucrats and the governments, but they are not as political as pressure groups. Pressure groups indirectly take help from politicians, government, system, lobbying, though social movements also does this, not like pressure groups. This is a basic difference between pressure group and a social movement. A basic difference between pressure group and a social movement. Okay, and there are various theories behind social movements. There are various theories, and one theory is deprivation theory. When you are exploited, when you are deprived, when you are exploited, when you are deprived, people will start agitating and start a movement. People will start agitation and start a movement. Okay. Karl Marx spoke about proletarian revolution, workers' revolution. When people are deprived of their salaries, allowances, basic rights, basic food, they will retaliate, they will agitate. When you are taken away with your rights, for example, tribal rights. For example, in Uttarakhand few years back, government gave permission to construct a Coca-Cola company by felling forest cover, trees, and tribals and people in that area agitated against the Coca-Cola company, started a movement. Finally, they approached legally to the court. Court issued a stay. This has happened. And so, whenever you are deprived of your rights, whenever you feel that you are annoyed or injustice has happened to you, there will be a group consciousness. Social movement is a collective action. One of the core features of social movement is belongingness to a cause. Group consciousness. There will be group consciousness, collective action. People start agitating. And one more important thing, one is deprivation theory. Second is structural strain theory. Structural strain. Whenever the structure was disrupted, for example, suddenly you brought LPG reforms, people might not adjust with it. They may think that old set of rules are far better. So, if there is a structural strain, people will retaliate. Or sometimes you have resource mobilization. For social movements, you need resources like people, like contacts, like lobbying, without which social movements are not possible. Like people, contacts, lobbying, etc. Mass society. When common interest gets affected, people flock together. When common interest got affected, people flock together. So there are many theories behind social movements: deprivation theory, structural strain theory, resource mobilization theory, mass society theory. There are many theories, and the most important thing one has to remember is social movements are not always peaceful and non-violent. Social movements are not always peaceful and non-violent. Sometimes they may lead to violent struggles. Sometimes violence might creep in. As I told you, non-cooperation movement is a social movement, and the end of non-cooperation movement have come with Chauri Chaura incident, where 22 policemen were killed in Chauri Chaura, Uttar Pradesh. We have set fire to police station. It ended up in violence. In Sterlite Copper Corporation issue in Thoothukudi, people were killed in the agitation. So, violence, we cannot say social movements are completely non-violent. Social movements have protests, goravs, mass struggles, sometimes they may go with violence also. In fact, as civil aspirants, we are expected to write which are in accordance with the constitution. Negatively speaking, for example, Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, he led Khalistan movement. It's also a movement, separatist movement and also a social movement, where they have taken up arms as constitutional supporters. We have to go in accordance with the spirit of the constitution and letter of the constitution, where we should always support non-violence. Okay, and social movements, Indian freedom struggle is a social movement. In fact, it's a social movement. And Indian National Congress is a pressure group before independence. And in fact, leading a separate movement for a separate state. Say for example, Telangana movement is a social movement. Telangana movement is a social movement. TRS is a pressure group. Telangana movement is a social movement before the state was formed. Before the state was formed, I am not talking about after the state was formed. So, social movements, pressure groups. Okay, when there is injustice, when there is a social disorientation, or when there is a cultural drift, social movements do occur. Social movements do occur. And one of the fantastic thing about social movement is, though not all the social movements bring results, though not all the social movements bring the targeted results or achieve the targeted results, there is one great thing about that, that was, it raises awareness, it brings out new leaders to the society. In fact, generations together, people will not forget the social movement. People will not ignore the social movement. You can easily catch the people's mindset about the cause on which you are really stressing upon. You may not get immediate results, but the attention of all the society towards a particular cause you can easily get with the social movement. You can easily achieve with the social movement. Okay, any movement, women movements, environment movements, LGBT movements. Initially society might not accept, system might not accept a change, but definitely a social movement have a impact, have a footprint. Anna Hazare's Jan Lokpal movement might have ended there, but in the people's minds there was a lot of awareness started about corruption in the minds of the people. Whereas Nirbhaya incident, anti-rape movement might have subsided, but a lot of awareness have come and there will be political outcomes like Nirbhaya Act, and people know what are the rights they have against rape now. So definitely social movements, I cannot judge that immediately they yield results, all social movements, but definitely they will raise the alarm, they will uphold a cause, they will bring awareness, they will enlighten the citizens, and they will move the youth, they will move the educated, and they will brighten up the country. This is for sure. And new social movements, as I told you, deals about quality of life issues. They also go global ecology, global human rights, global action against terrorism. So new social movements are not just local, they also have global ramifications. Sometimes they have entered into global ramifications. The difference between traditional social, normal social movements and new social movement is, Normal social movement deals with basic issues. New social movement is quality of life. New social movements do not always have physical forms, but also use ICT, information communication technology. New social movements also have taken a new stride, a new wave in international awareness. This is a difference between normal social movements and traditional social movements. And I told you theories. Deprivation theory is when you are exploited, when you are deprived. When you are exploited, when you are deprived. Deprivation theory will come into picture. And you will fight out, you will form a movement. Example, Karl Marx, workers' revolution. Structural strain. In structural strain theory, when structural difference arises, when you feel that the world is not like as you think it should be, as you believe it should be, then you keep working against that. Either it is for progressive way or regressive way. For example, some conservative social movements, you want the world should be like this. Now world is advancing, people are losing values. You can start a movement because world is not as such as you think to be. So there is a structural strain, so you can change it. You can try to change it. This is called structural strain theory. Resource mobilization theory, where for a social movement, it is not individual action. Though individuals need social movements, but social movements need society, mass action. We want resources, money, people, bureaucratic support, all these things. And most importantly, mass society theory. Human beings in the modern world cannot live in isolation. Human beings in the modern world cannot live in isolation. They want mass cause. They want to work for a social cause. They will come out. And the modern way to start social movement means, and here I can say, though it is out of box, in the modern era in 21st century, you cannot make youth to sit in one place for days together, years together and agitate for a cause. As you all know, you can even in the intellectual communities in the youth, you cannot make them to sit for 2-3 hours, more than 2-3 hours. For that reason, the modern method of moving a social movement, leading a social movement is through ICT, information communication technology, particularly through media and social media. This is about social movements. Done.